Okay, welcome back. So, what we're going to talk about is ways to alleviate or work on decreasing the stress and depression that come with working away from home. Okay. Now, with that being said, I'm not saying everybody that works away from home are feeling the same things, but I am saying that it's an alarming amount of people that say that it does affect them, that they get very stressed or depressed or have anxiety when working from home. Okay. Now, with that being said, we're going to look at two different aspects here. We're going to look at first the person working away from home, and we can look at some potential ways to help with that. And then we're going to talk about the people, the family that's staying home, and what we can do to work on that as well. Okay. So, the biggest thing is being separated from loved ones and your lifestyle that you would normally have, your regular routines, things like that. There's a lot of concerns that come with that. So, we're looking at, believe it or not, most people that work outside of their home, like travel for work, a lot of them are actually become drinkers. They become very heavy drinkers because it's a way to self-soothe. A lot of them don't want to feel that feeling. They don't want to deal with emotions. They don't want to deal with anything, so it's easier to drink. Okay. Um, that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all. Drinking just to drown ourselves is not a way to fix the situation. And we need to look on things that are attainable and achievable, because these are professions and people that are going to have to do this or will do this for probably years to come, you know? Um, so there's a few things. So you get the depression, you get the anxiety, you get the isolation, you get a bunch of bad health habits such as poor eating, lack of exercise, things of that nature that compress and come together and create an atmosphere for very bad mental health statuses. Okay. So we have to think about what we need to do and what comes about this. Okay. So some of those challenges is, like I've said, being away from your friends and your family, being away from home, um, not being able to have a regular routine generally. Sometimes you have to travel, and travel times are different. Sometimes you're just up for hours working. Sometimes you're got severe deadlines you have to meet, whatever it may be. It's a very mentally challenging aspect of working away from home. It's not the ability to set an alarm clock at 6:30 and get up and go when you want to go or need to go to be there by 8. That's not happening. um, so let's talk about what we're doing here. Isolation is probably one of the biggest things that happens in many situations, such as truck driving. Again, I know more about that because I live that life. So that isolation, meaning that you don't want to isolate necessarily, but what do? Well, how do you engage in that situation where you can balance yourself to where you're not just completely sitting in your truck driving down the road 24/7 with nothing happening for socialization. Um, Phones, they're your bestie. If you don't have one and you're working away from home, I just don't see that happening. But if you don't, work on getting one, because having that connection to your family, your friends, having that way to contact somebody if you need to, um, that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Um, I know I spend several hours a week on the phone with William, and it's just a way for me to know where he's at and to communicate. And we have to make that our normal, and we do. I think we do pretty good at it. Um, but you also have the concern, like in his position, he doesn't have a lot of coworkers, so to say. He doesn't have, like, his company's got other employees, but I don't even know that he personally knows one employee of the company that he works for. His boss, well, his boss does not care to talk to him all day. Um, And then what do you have outside of that? He doesn't have coworkers that he can just talk to or see or anything like that. Just doesn't exist. So you can't really get to know your fellow workers. But what you can do is, for example, what I know has worked for us is that because I do work a job, so when I'm at work, he listens to YouTube all day. um, and it's a way for him to hear about what's going on in the world, to catch up on news, to listen to something funny. Um, it's not true socialization in all aspects, but thankfully for him, he's found a group of people um, that he can talk to through the YouTube community, and that are safe people and that do understand his lifestyle because they do what he does. So he's outreached and he's became part of this group that we love and adore, and it's helped us in numerous ways when I'm not available. Um, Also, I mean, he has family he can call. He has, because of his phone, he has everything's right there. The phone is his life. When he leaves here, the phone is his lifeline. Okay. Um, but that's just one aspect of it. Part of your mental health is, the other things like making sure you're eating a proper diet. I don't know if you've ever ate truck stop food. We won't call that really proper all the times. I mean, just saying. And if he's not eating at the truck stop, there's a restaurant. It's a McDonald's. Seriously? Seriously. So what we do is we go grocery shopping before he leaves. We try to get him 2 to 3 weeks of meals. And they have to be still pretty not the best meals because, he doesn't have a lot of refrigerator space and he definitely doesn't have a lot of freezer space. So you can't be putting the steaks up in there because you can only hold about 4 in the freezer. But we do make sure that he has meals that he can have on hand to be able to eat at any time that he needs. And that he's not having to just fill himself with McDonald's, you know? You can tell when he's traveling, like, if there's a really like, if he really wants to eat out, he'll be like, "Taco John's is coming up," because we don't have Taco John's here, right? So, like, he gets excited about the Taco John's and he splurges on that, but outside of that, there's not really many restaurants out there, connected to his truck stops that he wants to eat. Now, some of them do have sit down restaurants. That's very true. Issue with that is there's time constraints. Like, he can get a load today that delivers tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Oh, and he only needs to drive 699 miles. It's hard. He has constraints. It's something that he can't just regularly do. He cannot always just go in and sit down and eat. It just doesn't happen, which does affect his mental health. Our food, what we put into our body is how our body processes and how our body functions, and what we give it really can affect our mental health, believe it or not. The next thing to that is exercise. Some jobs, like if you're in the military, you're exercising. You're exercising hard. You're probably overdoing it sometimes. I'm just saying. But what about the truck driver that's sitting on the truck? Or what about the salesman that's going from flight to flight to flight to flight to flight to flight to flight? Are they really exercising? Well, some of them do. And if you're not, start. Most hotels have a gym or something like that, or you can just go for a walk. But for truck drivers, again, we have to run into the fact that there's not a 10 gym at every corner. It just doesn't happen. Right. And so I know that unless William just gets out and walks laps around his truck, he's really not exercising. And again, and again, it's going to depend on your time restraints. Okay. And I know that it's hard, but I've also seen it be achievable. And people do exercise every day in their truck because you get a 15-minute pre trip. You get a, I don't know. I don't want to get into all that. But there are times where it becomes available for that exercise, and that's very effective, and it helps with that stress and anxiety. His job, he would tell you he's never experienced anxiety. What? So you mean to tell me when you were freaking out about not being able to get that load on time, that wasn't anxiety? Ah, that was very much anxiety. But he's so used to that he doesn't feel that it's anxiety. Like, he didn't know back in the day before he met me that that was anxiety, that was worry, that was stress, that was fear. And if you do that on a daily, it becomes very unhealthy, right? So therefore, I identified it's called anxiety. No, no, it really is. There's a time constraint on it. There's a time constraint on when you pick up your load to when you get it to your load. And depending on how far it is, it might be a bad day. It might be a bad day. It might be oh, goodness, because he does stress and worry about that. And let's talk about electricians. Oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine the anxiety that they're feeling. They have towns, like houses full of people, among people who are depending on them to get this done. But we can't mess up, because if we just do one thing wrong, our whole life could be zapped. And I'm not even trying to be funny. But then you have the anxiety of worrying that you're doing everything right on top of that. So you have the worry of making everybody happy, plus you have the worry of making sure that you're doing everything correctly. Let's talk about the military people. You don't think they have anxiety? Of course they do. So we've got to give you the tools to be able to reduce this in all costs. Find 5 minutes, take 5 laps. Find 10 minutes, do some push ups. I don't care what you do, start exercising. Start exercising and start feeding your body right. If you're stopping at every convenience store and you're grabbing a Butterfinger, break your fingers, because that's really not healthy for you. And I know that sounds funny coming from me, because I mean, I'm not a small girl, but I also don't do that, because we know that's not healthy. Okay. If you can find a way to start feeding your body the fuel it needs, and you can start exercising and getting some movement in out of your body, it really will help combat negative thoughts, negative feelings, reduce the anxiety, reduce the worry. It helps shift that mindset. It helps make it something a little positive. Also, with that, for you guys that have limited sleep, okay, it will make sure that you're getting that rest peacefully, because what you're doing is you're going to be working your body. You're going to be using the fuel that you're giving it. And then when it's time to rest, you're going to rest a little easier. Okay. So those are all three things. Okay. Um, I kind of wanted to read just a little bit about isolation again. Um, this says isolation, loneliness and isolation are the result of spending days or even years away from home. Slowly, you start feeling disengaged with people that you've left behind or ached for their presence again. So, again, as I said in the beginning, if you don't have a smartphone, I want you to get one. If you don't have a phone, get one. I don't care if it's a smartphone, just get a phone, because the isolation is probably what starts 99% of bad habits in that. Um, and most professions that we've talked about, you have the ability to have coworkers and to combat that. But with truck drivers, you have very little opportunity to meet your peers, your coworkers. So we need to work on improving everything around you. Um, It's one of those things where if we don't provide you with options or ways to improve this, you're going to continue to do the same thing. And you're going to continue to sit there and feel very alone, very heavy, not even physically, but just very heavy, like you're just alone, swimming in your own world. So I wanted to give some things that you can do to improve that. Um, I'm going to read a little bit from this article that I found on a website, which I'll link below. Um, a little bit different from why truck drivers have it a little bit differently than other jobs that travel is because if you're a salesman, again, you have people that you can talk to. You have people in airports. If you're in military, you have a whole platoon, you have a whole group. If you are electricians, you're never going to not have somebody sitting next to you because you don't get to work alone very much unless you're a private electrician. And if that's you, that means you're probably working at home, a home job. Oil fields, you normally have others on your rig that you're working with. You can't be out there alone. Um, for truck drivers, you have nobody. And I can say this not even from just being with William, but my father as well. Because my dad spent no time really with people, he became very unhealthy. And it took his life a lot earlier than what it could have because he didn't have the daily interaction for somebody to help him. He didn't have the daily support. He didn't have um, somebody to say, back then they didn't even have laws about sleeping and break time. And he didn't have that person to say, hey, you got to stop now. Um, so his health also went down. So we've got to combat this. We've got to find ways to work on this. And we've got to identify that it is truly a mental health concern. And there's many challenges that happen from working away from our family, right? But the loneliness that most truck drivers feel, I said I was going to read out of Arca. I'm not even going to. I'm just going to tell you what I'm feeling. The loneliness that truck drivers can feel is saddening. And until I went in and lived this life, not only as a child of a truck driver, but also, the significant other of a truck driver, I could have never told you about what I see. I seen very little of my father. I remember, my stepmom and would come get us and we would spend summers there. And I can remember seeing my dad maybe, I don't know, a couple times a month while I'm there. It was not very much. My dad still couldn't tell you my favorite color. He couldn't have told you anything about me because when he was home, we worked in the garden. I do remember those special moments. My dad wasn't able to, not that he didn't, he wasn't able to do a lot because the job that he did to provide for his family took him away from being able to do so many things with us. And I don't think that my dad ever wanted that. But again, the pay that he was receiving versus the education that he had, he was getting amazing pay for very little education that he had. And he couldn't get that at home. And so I know for anybody out there sitting there saying mental health's not a concern, it is. It is. And when your mental health starts failing, your health starts failing. So just be mindful of that. If you are handling any of this depression or loneliness or anything, make sure you're okay reaching out. Make sure if you need a resort for you, reach out to me. I would gladly be glad to give you the resources. I've got some resources that I can help anybody or give anybody that needs help if you are one of these people that are affected from the demands of working away from home. Um, I talked too much on this video and I talked all about that part. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it here and we're going to go into another video. So we'll probably have 2 more videos now. Yay. So please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll be back, guys.